Okay, so right now we're talking about color. We're talking about the color wheel, and we're talking about those 12 colors on the color wheel. So the first thing I want you to think about when you're looking at the color wheel is you want to look at the relationships of colors. So colors that sit opposite each other on the color wheel are called complementary colors. So you're going to always see yellow at the very top of the wheel, and at the bottom of the wheel, you're going to be seeing violet. So those two, when you put them together, are going to create a lovely contrast, a complement to each other. You're also going to see orange and blue, and you can see this more vibrantly depending on what colors you have, what intensity the color is, how much yellow is in the orange, because red and yellow make orange. So you could have more red and it would be a stronger color. You could have blue, which is primary, but it could also be more on the greenish side. So these colors will vary depending on the lighting, and it also depends on the pigment you're using. If you are looking at something on the computer screen, that color is going to vary from what you see printed out. So keep in mind that color is relative to the light that is, you are looking at it in. So the lighting is going to have a lot to do with the way you see color. And also, you don't see the color the same when it is next to another color. And there have been artists that have done complete, studies and research. Joseph Albers is one artist that comes to mind who did an extensive study on placing different colors next to each other. But for our purposes right now, in this course, what we're going to talk about is complementary colors. So putting colors next to each other to create some contrast. So we're going to use these papers. I'm also going to have some other papers, so you can see that you might say this is a teal or kind of in the green blue family, and then this is kind of in the mauvey pinks. So when you put that next to each other, I think that creates an interesting contrast in colors, but way differently than these very simple color, those that are right there. So we're going to play around with some of these, and we're going to work on some compositions. I have that. I also, think about the glitter and how that is going to change it up completely if I put that next to this. Also strong contrast. So everything we're going to do has to do with that idea of complementary color. Also on the color wheel, you're going to notice that there are warm and cool colors. So what do I mean by warm and cool? So if I just take these two right here, here we use this for our red. These are the warm colors. Think of fire, think of sunsets, things that are warm. And then the cool colors, thinking more of, winter landscape, blue sky, ocean, all right? So warm and cool colors that just, by their very nature are going to complement each other. So I'm going to take this print that I created, and it's a nice print, but I haven't been doing much with it. It's just sitting around, so I decided I'm going to cut and tear it into pieces and use some of these pieces for the little demonstration collage that I have. So I'm keeping all of the pieces, all the bits, and this has a little embellishment on it, which could be interesting. And remember, what you're looking for is contrasting color to make that pop, to give it that visual interest. So I have this piece right here, and I do see a lot of contrast in that. And I'm going to experiment with a couple of other pieces putting it on here. And of course, this is an abstract composition, so I am not trying to make anything that is realistic or recognizable here. I'm just trying to create a visually interesting composition with the shapes and the colors of these different papers. So I have a couple different sizes here, and I want you to keep that in mind because varying the size and placement of your shapes is going to make for a more interesting composition. So that's something we're going to talk more about a little later on, but pattern is created when shapes repeat, and it is also important that everything be different shapes and different sizes for a lot of visual interest. So the other thing I want you to think about when you are putting different colors together is not all of the colors are going to be primary and bright colors. You want to look for subtle colors. You want to look for muted colors. When we talk a little bit more about mixing color and toning down these colors, you're going to get the type of colors you see here, which are not easily found in the color wheel, but they come from mixing up. For example, the pattern paper is kind of a dark teal, looks like a bluish green, and the strips of pinky papers are more mauvey and like a very light tone of pink in the background. And when you start looking for these color relationships, like a warm muted tone and a cool muted tone, you're going to get more sophisticated color and as a result, more sophisticated designs. So here I'm just lining up a rectangular shape with some circle shapes. And because they are in different color families, you can see warm and cool tones and different patterns on these papers, you're getting a lot of interest in this design. Even though it is very abstract, it's very interesting and more sophisticated than if it were the brighter tones of the last pieces of paper I was using. So the next thing I want to talk about is putting a color next to a color. As I said before, a lot of research has been done on the psychology of color and how colors appear in the different lighting that you have or when you have a color next to a color. So check out this green leaf, same color, but it looks different when it is placed on different colors. So these are the same violet color leaves, and one on the light side looks very dark, and then the same color looks lighter. And when you see the green leaves, the same effect is happening, exact same colors, but when you place it on the darker color, it looks lighter, and when it is on the lighter color, the green leaf is going to look darker. So here I'm experimenting with a composition that is complementary. So in this instance, it is, red, pinky, mauve tones, and, the blue-green tones, okay? So, complementary colors don't have to be red and just green, but anything in those families of colors can be considered, if you use them together, a complementary color scheme. So I have this really shiny, like a deep pink circle, and I just have circles right now. And it's kind of like a puzzle. It's kind of like thinking about what is going to make the most interesting arrangement. We only have one shape here right now, so maybe I'll introduce a couple other shapes. What's going to make the most interesting arrangement of these color shapes? Okay, so here I am just fiddling around a bit. And maybe I'm going to introduce some of these leaf shapes that I have cut out. And if I put a green one on the mauve, that's going to be more interesting than, green on green, perhaps. So this is, what I think where the fun comes in. Maybe none of it works and you want to start over again. Okay, so we've talked about a couple different things. We've talked about complementary colors. We've talked about muted tones. We talked about putting colors, against the light background and a dark background. Now it's time to take those bits and pieces and the things that I have gathered and start to arrange them in a composition. And as I said a minute ago, this is the fun part. So this is where you're thinking about visual interest. You're thinking about where you're placing the items. You're thinking about the color of these things. You're thinking about the shape. And what you're trying to do is create a visually interesting composition, one that the viewer will enjoy seeing, and is something that would be fun to see on a card or nice in a gallery wall. So it's totally abstract. You're not worrying about, does it look like something? You are just concerned about creating a harmonious composition with this visual interest going on. So the background is kind of a light magenta, and it's a kind of ombre effect going up to white. And I have placed some of those darker green shapes as the base and some of these circles around. So it's kind of like indicating maybe it's an organic plant-like type of composition, but it really doesn't have to be anything. And this is where you're going to experiment. So gather up your tools, gather up your supplies, start cutting some papers, arranging, thinking about complementary color, and you're thinking about the size of things, varying that, and varying the placement of the shapes as well. So here it is finished, and here I am just showing you something that looks like this piece is framed and how it might look like that. So enjoy this activity, and then stay tuned for the next, where we talk more about pattern and the size and the placement.